Hello, viewers out there. You're welcome to Sports Orbit Extra. My name is Afa Acho. Salif Usman is also in the studio with me. Salif, welcome to this weekend's edition of the program.
Thank you for so it's my pleasure.
All right, on this edition of the program, we're going to take a look at list of indigenous Super Eagles coaches in the past and how they fared. Of course, recall that on Monday during the week, Finidi George was announced as the coach of the Super Eagles, and with that, we decided to go memory lane to see. We recall that before this appointment, a lot of Nigerians had clamored for the appointment of a local coach. Although some Nigerians were still of the opinion that a foreign coach should be appointed, but some of us, a lot of us, had opted for a local coach, and looks like maybe the NFF head, our voices, and Finidi George was appointed, and with that, we have decided to take a look at previous Nigerian coaches and how they have fared. So, of course, first off, we will look at Adewale Adegoke, who incidentally was the first ever indigenous Nigerian coach, second Nigerian coach ever, but the first indigenous, which was he was appointed in 1950 and he was in charge until 1952. Of course, a lot of Nigerians of our generation might not know much about him, and of course, in 1950, when it comes to football, Nigeria was nowhere up there. So you can understand that he didn't even make any impact much, and that's why his name is does not ring a bell.
Yes, also his name will not ring the bell, particularly for the present generation
Yeah.
of Nigerians, except those that are historian they can always make reference to it. But we are talking about pre-independence era. So obviously, I don't know much about him, and I can't say I know much about that era. But however, the good thing is that, and the good thing is that it is glad my heart to even know that as early as 1950, we are already having Nigerian
Exactly.
making way to coach the national team. And just like you say, the second national team coach. That means before him there was a foreign national team coach, and immediately after that one, we have this indigenous coach coaching our national team. To me, that is a good mark for Nigeria, and I'm surprised that if at that time we have as early as that time we have already have Nigerian coaching. By now we should also have been a master in the game.
Exactly.
And if this idea of talking about foreign coach shouldn't have been a match at all again.
Of course, rightly said. Of course, let's move over to Festus Onigbinde, of course, who incidentally was the second indigenous Nigerian coach. And Onigbinde has been there. I mean, since the 80s, he was first appointed in 1982. That was the first time he took charge of the Eagles, then known as the Green Eagles. And of course, his second stint was in 84, and in that year he eventually took Nigeria to the final of the African Cup of Nations, where we lost 3-1 to Cameroon. Also, Onigbinde also made a return back in 2000, late 2001 actually, where he now led the Super Eagles to the 2002 FIFA World Cup. Well, of course, looking at Onigbinde, a veteran, when you talk about coaching in the game, first took charge of Super Eagles, then Green Eagles in 1982. And of course, 2002, that was how many years later? I think
20 years later.
He,
82 and 2002.
exactly, he still took charge of the team again to Korea, Japan, which incidentally was one of our worst ever outings at a World Cup performance. Of course, we all know the circumstances in which he took over that team. Yeah.
Well, looking at the Onigbinde era, particularly in the early 82 and then the 2004, 84, when he led the team to the final of AFCON in Cameroon, in which he eventually lost 3-1 to the, in Cote d'Ivoire, in which he lost to Cameroon in the final in Bouaké. But just like I said earlier in the case of Adewale, it also glad my heart and it glad Nigeria. And sometimes the question the one people asking ourselves, it's just like Nigerians, either we overlook our own capacities, or we don't even try to make a part of what we have done. Because it is surprising, it is glad my heart to know that as early as, just like I said earlier, at 1984 we have a Nigerian, a born Nigerian, groomed in terms of football tactically, and around that time, most of Nigerian players will also play within the local league.
Exactly.
Manage the players from the local league and take Nigeria to the Nations Cup and reach the final. If by that time we were able to, I don't know how to do this, how we could not be able to manage your success and build on this success we have recorded in the past. Because for we to have been in the final, anybody, if you have played the final, it glass that you are also good as being a champion. But for you to lose the final, you can also be good as a champion. Because by slip mistake or anything, you can lose the final. It doesn't matter that Cameroon that what beat us in the final. To some extent, if you look at it, they may not be better than Nigeria. But just some, if you have played the final, you just need element of luck to win. Okay. And to reach the final, we ought to have, what I'm trying to say is that in some way, we ought to have built on this success. By now, we should supposed to have forgotten the idea of either to bring a foreign coach or any other thing. By now, Nigeria is supposed to be, if you are not Brazil is being gradually being forgotten, we're supposed to be the best of football nations in Africa. By now, I talk of football in Africa, and I'm also, if I'm not surprised, at that time that we have people in Nigeria producing this Nigeria, I don't think any African team can dare even come closer to where to have a regional coach coaching their national team at that time. So we also have been this progress on this success, but it's unfortunate that we sometimes, and if you look at the foreign coaches that come in between, what do they take us to? Apart from West Stafford, that eventually performed better ahead of those previous local coaches before him that won us 1994 Nations Cup. There's no any foreign coach that come before West Stafford do us any better, nor any other foreign coach that come after West Stafford do us any better. Apart from West Stafford, and then build on that success of West Stafford, but Finidi George give us Olympic medal. Apart from these two, there's no anybody you can mention. There's no any other foreign coach that come to this Nigeria to coach the national team that ever take us to the final of Africa Cup of Nations. No.
You're completely correct. So, I mean, for someone like Onigbinde, veteran of the game, of course, next indigenous coach was Paul Hamilton, who after had initially was coach of the under-20 national team, then was appointed coach of the Super Eagles in 1989, but was fired after Nigeria failed. Of course, his task was to qualify Nigeria for the 1990 FIFA World Cup. I remember that qualifying series vividly. Of course, and we just couldn't make it to the World Cup. Exactly.
And it's understanding that Hamilton do why he could not stay long on the job, because the task was to qualify for the World Cup. Unfortunately, he couldn't qualify, and he has to go. But I think to some extent, but in my own to some extent, like it or not, he has also made his own impact, because after that, he gets a point where the national women coach take out the female to be for their first ever World Cup. In summary, in my own view, I know you are still looking at some of other coaches, but I think most of those local coaches, in my view, kudos to them. They didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a surprising thing when going through the records of our local coaches, you see that each and every one of them, to an extent,
making meaningful impact.
Exactly, so that's why when we continue to clamor for foreign coaches, like I continue to say, because there's nothing the foreign coaches have done that local coaches have not done.
Yeah.
A foreign coach has won the Nations Cup. Local coach has won
the Nations Cup. Yes,
foreign coach has qualified us for the World Cup. Local coaches have done even more times than even the foreign coach.
Yes, so right. You are absolutely correct. And although you are still looking at what, like if you look at it holistically, Nigeria has won. If you look at we have the highest numbers of semi-final compared to any other African nation, and at the same time, most of these final. For instance, Finidi take us to the final. Amadu take us to the semi-final twice. In Mali 2002 and Angola 2010. Austin Egbab also take us to the semi-final in 2006 in Egypt. And then Christian Chukwu also take us to the semi-final in Tunisia 2004. But in all these coaches, Onigbinde, Shaibu Amadu, Christian Chukwu, and Austin Egbabo, they all make medal.
Exactly.
While Onigbinde won the silver medal, Amokashi Shaibu Amadu won a bronze medal twice. Christian Chukwu also won a bronze medal, and Austin Egbabo also won a bronze medal. But if you're looking at the other, apart from the other foreign coaches I mentioned earlier, who do you mention that are better than? Just like you see, yes. West Stafford was able to give us the Olympic a gold medal at AFCON, and at the same time, Stephen Keshi the master himself, the Christian Chukwu, Stephen Keshi, was able to equal that record by also winning our third African Cup of Nations title in South Africa 2010. So in all, looking at it holistically, no foreign coach of in terms of output has not done better than what the Nigerian coaches have done. But what I'm trying to say earlier, what I said earlier, is that why instead of us to build on what we have, we keep on clamoring for a foreign coach that can never give us. And in some extent, if you look at it, that even if you place the foreign coaches and the local coaches that have who have them made this significant impact in the history of on our national team, if you put them side by side in terms of payment, in terms of enabling environment, the enabling environment that we're giving to the foreign coaches, we're not never giving to these Nigerian coaches. If also if you give them equal opportunities, definitely the Nigerian coaches will have even do better than the foreign coaches. Because for instance, the last two occupants of the Super Eagles job before Finidi George, in the case of Genetro and Pesero, why they were earning as much as $60,000 per month in terms of salary. See, as much as $60,000 per month. What was the previous coach before them? For Stephen Keshi, who coached and take us to the World Cup, who coached and take us to the final of the African Cup and won the medal. What was his coach? Was salary. Allegedly, he was not paying more than $5,000 per month.
Well, we'll get into that. Let's just look at other coaches so we don't digress. Of course, Christian Chukwu. Yes, of course, we mentioned him. Third indigenous coach, taking first has his team from 2003, of course, to 2005. Like we said earlier, leading Nigeria to the semi-finals of the 2004 AFCON. Then, of course, failed to during the 06 World Cup qualification phase. Of course, he was blamed for not qualifying for 2006 World Cup. Exactly, of course, home and away, very painful experience. It was in that one.
Just like I think, just like you said earlier. Very previous, but not be able to win the Nations Cup. Like the Nations Cup, he lost the semi-final match to the host, Tunisia, and he got the ultimate thing that was to qualify for the World Cup, which unfortunately we couldn't qualify for the World Cup. And even not qualify for the World Cup, a lot of factors were also built into because apart from taking Christian Chukwu technical input, there are some other factors that we need to consider that will make the coach to work for. I talked earlier about enabling environment. Okay, we are playing at that time, if I recall vividly, we were playing in Nations Cup. We went to Angola, we lost. And we needed Angola to come here and we needed to beat Angola at our own home.
Exactly.
And what the federations ought to have done at that time was to provide a very conducive environment for our national team to flourish it. But you know that you have a player that were all of them, 60% of them, if not 80% of them were playing in Europe in a very cool and chill weather. But you took the match to Kano in a very hot weather. And not just took the match to Kano in a very hot weather, you also fixed the match at the afternoon, 4 o'clock, at the time when the weather was so very hot, and then your players could not perform. So it was yes, you may blame it on Stephen Keshi based on technical input, but in terms of Christian Chukwu, in terms of his technical ability, but enabling environment was the enabling environment there for him to succeed. These are the questions. So the federations also have blamed them. To should have paid that, and that also caused Galadima his second return as the president, as the chairman of Nigeria Football Association.
Very well. Of course, then came Stevie Keshi, of course, the big boss who was appointed in 2011, led Nigeria to qualification for the 2013 African Cup of Nations, which they went on to win Burkina Faso in the final. Of course, we all recall that after that victory, the next day he resigned his appointment only to rescind his decision. Also, of course, Kempsey also secured Nigeria qualification to the 20 World Cup by beating Ethiopia 4-1 on aggregate in a playoff record. Keshi also set a record in African football by being the first African coach to qualify 2 African nations, Nigeria and Togo, for the World Cup in 2005 and 2013. He also helped Nigeria be the first country to achieve an African Cup of Nations trophy, and World Cup qualification both in 2013. I mean, for Keshi, what more can you say about this man? I mean,
Yeah,
for him, even before the Super Eagles job, this is a man who had
proof his
gone to Togo, gone to Mali, and proved his worth. For Nigeria to even look his way, and he came and never disappointed. And I will even remember, even during the 2013 African Cup of Nations, in fact, during the tournament, there are even rumors of him almost being sacked.
Being sacked in the middle of the
In
tournament.
the middle of the tournament because of how we started that tournament poorly. But we went on to win that tournament. But even at the end of the day, look the treatment, look how he was treated by the federation.
Just like I was telling you,
Exactly.
in terms of enabling environment, compared the kind of treatment you give to them compared to their foreign counterpart. And just like in terms of Keshi is the most successful Nigerian coaches in all ramifications in any way you can think of. Just like apart from what he has achieved in Nigeria, he also go beyond the scene of Nigeria to achieve defeat. Togo will never dream of qualifying for the World Cup. And after Keshi, I don't think Togo, it may take them for another 40 years or another 35 decades to think of qualifying for the World Cup. Togo just a country of minor, small size, were surprisingly qualified for the 2006 World Cup when the like of Senegal, the like of South Africa, up to today, even not for the sake of South Africa full the World Cup in 2010, South Africa have never played at the World Cup. But Togo surprised the nation qualified because of Togo Keshi's technical prowess. And coming to Nigeria, after winning the Nations Cup, he was also the first Nigerian coach to also take Nigeria to the second round of the World Cup at the 2014.
Exactly. Well, let's quickly go on a break. When we come back, Sport Orbit Extra continues. Don't go nowhere.
Be part of our brand. Leadership for God and country.
Welcome back from that break. Of course, we also had Austin Eguavon, who seemed to have been a permanent fixture when it comes to Nigerian coaches. Of course, with his position as technical director, anytime there is a vacuum, he's always there. Of course, like we said, also, in as much as many people might say, yes, Eguavon. In fact, a lot of Nigerians will tell that among Nigerian coaches that to them Eguavon has been one of the worst. That's not my words, what some Nigerians have said. But even in spite of that, even Eguavon got us a medal at the AFCON.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that Eguavon should be considered as one of the worst. But in view, if you look at it in terms of output, Eguavon has also make a medal at Egypt 2006. And if you look at that qualification, I think there was we were even on the point of missing that qualification before he was
stepped in.
He stepped in, and immediately that was the qualification after the classification was shared.
Exactly.
Chubu was shared. He was an assistant to the then he stepped in, and we needed to play certain matches to win that match. He went to Algeria, beating Algeria, and then come to Algeria. Zimbabwe to come here, and beat went to Algeria, beat Algeria 5-2. 5-2 the match ended in Algeria in a match that was very crucial. So qualification for that tournament alone was a big achievement because we were on the point of losing out that qualification. And then he still went to the tournament proper, and then he was able to medal at the cup. We lost the semi-final match controversially. Still, I still believe that match was controversially because the penalty that was awarded Cote d'Ivoire with the Drogba goal up to today is being positioned as an offside goal. But still, that was the goal that nailed our field at the Egypt 2006. So, but we lost that final to Cote d'Ivoire, controversial as I said. So, to some level, no matter how you ascribe to it, but you can't take away what he has achieved as a coach in Nigeria.
Of course, Shoaib Modu, what more can you say? I mean, for many, considered as one of the most successful Nigerian coaches, even before taking up the national team job, Amodu has proven himself locally with El Kanemi, with BCC Lions, both local and continental. So Amodu had already been a tested coach before, and he understood Nigerian football very well. And and incidentally, he was at the helm on 5 different occasions for the Super Eagles, qualifying Nigeria for the World Cup, I think on 2 occasions, but failed to lead the team. Exactly.
You know, qualified Super Eagles for 2 times World Cup, 2 World Cup, 2002 World Cup and 2010 World Cup.
Exactly.
And 2002 Onigbede come from a back door and take over. But if you look if you look at the scenario that play out, yes, he went to Mali, a team that get to the semi-final, you can't score that team as a bad failure.
Yeah,
because a tournament of 16 teams and your team made it to the top 4 and to the last one and become the third finishing team. Yes, we won the semi-final to Senegal and then we were able to beat host in the third place match to win the bronze medal. But because of Amadou was ascribed as a poor performance and that simply because he disagreed with the then minister, the then minister, the later Isaiah Mako. Because Isaiah Mako has a problem with the players about their player allowance. And ordinarily, you can't expect a coach to back an administrator. A coach has to pick a line and to support his player. Because it's simply to support his player, they tag him as a bad coach, that he was a failure, and then they bring the from nowhere. And even you look at our preparations, if you look at the history, if you go into the memory lane and look at our preparation for that to that tournament, was even questionable. There were crucial friendly matches that were organized, were put on in place for him to play, but most of those matches were cancelled. And even when we play eventually the Cote d'Ivoire for the Cote d'Ivoire matches, he said that he clearly stated in his match report and everything that these matches, most of the players he have here, they have question mark. That I'm pleaded with the federation, please don't register this list yet. Let me, after this match, then I'll not submit the full list. But I just put this list there as a backup. But NF, and he pleaded that even it means paying a fine for submitting a list, take it from my salary. What commitment do you want the coach to take it like that? But NFL not willing to pay. NFL then no one willing to pay. Went ahead and restarted the list. And the coach pleaded that don't restart this list first. Let me play this match and know the status of every player before I submit my final list. But they went ahead and submitted the list to the CAF. So that affected him. But for most of those things that we are always blame the coach, if you look at it critically and go into the detail, you know that the fault are not all the coaches. The administration are 50% responsible for most of those problems.
If you recall, qualified Nigeria for 2010,
World
Las Lagabak was brought in from nowhere.
Yes, and even like when Las Lagabak was brought in, if you want us to analyze that and to dissect it, we may not have that time to talk about it, because there is a lot of things, a lot of controversy into that. And even some governors, the then governor, former governor of Rivers State, wrote me a message. The then DG of the National Sports Commission and the then Minister Ibrahim Biu from Kwara State were all responsible for all the issues that happened. Although at the end of the day they sacrificed the former president of Nigeria Football Commission, Sani Lulu, for the problem. But Sani Lulu pleaded, even at the time, Amadou ought to have been the sack Amadou before the Nations Cup in Angola. Amadou was not allowed to play, but there was a meeting that was held at the presidential villa. They all see that Amadou has to go. But the then president, and then after they almost want to go, then the then president Jonathan now asked that Lulu, what is your view? And Lulu said, well, Mr. President, I can't sack a coach 3 weeks to the tournament. That tell me, who am I going to bring now 3 weeks to the tournament to coach the team? And that is when Jonathan said we heard him, and I agree with him. And that was how Amadou was allowed to even go to the Nations Cup. If not, they could have even sacked him before the 2010 World Nations Cup.
All right. Finally, of course, Sunday Olise, very short stint he was. Controversial, you might call his tenure, but when it comes to record, out of 14 games he played, Nigeria lost only 2, scoring 19 goals and conceding 6. But of course, Sunday Olise.
Even before Sunday Olise, there was Shia again.
Yes, of course, Shia came in 2011, a short stint.
And his inability to qualify for the 2002 Nations Cup was also but before then, the qualification for the Nations Cup was already in danger. He was bringing as a rescue mission. Unfortunately, he was not guided well. Federation also played significant role for his ability to reach that Nations Cup. So both him, Shia and Son Lucius are former international ex-international who have a
Yeah.
very short time with Super Eagle coach due to some slight mistake. So and
Of
that's
course,
why
for Olise, I mean, everybody who knows him from his playing days, a very no-nonsense person.
yeah.
Not someone who take nonsense from anybody, be it federation or anybody. So, he wasn't the kind of person who would take unnecessary orders from the
You
federation.
want to play around.
Exactly, because he had his own ideas for the national team when he came, but and clearly he has said it subsequently in various interviews after that look, the working conditions were simply not conducive for him, and he simply had to leave the job.
Yes, even though in as much as I agree with you and I agree with Odisha, I agree with, we know his stance as being a non-nonsense. Even as a captain, that is why it's one of the things. Even as a playing captain, then that he has a problem with the then that is why the like of him, Victor Igali, and our 5 of them were not able to allowed to go to the Korea Japan.
Exactly. Under during Odegbinde
and as Isaiah Amako as a minister, simply because Ulus as a captain they stand against the will of the minister.
Exactly.
I even recall there was one challenge that the Lucius challenged the minister. Then Ike Shirumo as the goalkeeper has an injury in Mali there, and Ike Shirumo was taken to the hospital. So the next day the minister was asking how is Ike Shirumo, and the Lucius challenged him instantly. He said, if it is your son that was taken to the hospital, will you stand here and ask him how was Ike Shirumo? You know to have gone to the hospital and check on him, and you call yourself the minister. That the minister didn't take that kind of challenge lightly. It's one of the problems that led to Lucius and his friends not being dropped out of the team. So having that someone that's a no-nonsense one who don't like to tolerate nonsense, but he was also one of his own doing in the national team. Because coming as a coach, his idea of starting, yes, it's good to instill discipline in the team, but he started dealing with senior players. Also make mark his tenure as the national team, because he started with Vincent Enyama, he started with Mikel, and you can't just come as a national team. You need some of those experienced players to be around. Yes, even though you demand loyalty from them, but there's something you need to consider. Exactly. In every national team, even at the club level, there are some senior players you don't just toss them anyhow.
Well, I mean, that's of course, and now we have a new coach for the Super Eagles, the person of Finidi George, and of course, as his tenure begins, we'll watch and see how he will going to fare. Of course, quickly before we go, some matches during the weekend Champions League. Of course, it was that superstar-studded clash. Madrid versus Bayern ended 2-2, and of course, Borussia Dortmund Paris ended 1-0 in the first leg. Of course, next week, second legs will come up, and from there we'll know our finalists. That's our package on this weekend's edition of the program. Hopefully, we'll be back next weekend with another exciting edition of Sports Orbit Extra. Salifu, thank you for being in the studio on today's edition.
Thank you.
Until come your way next weekend, do have a wonderful time. My name is Afa Acho, and it's bye for now.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.